Ram Ram Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. Some of you seems to be new. I see some new names. How many of you are attending for the first time? Please raise your hands or your symbol on the screen. That means you have all attended before. Okay, so there is one hand up, but the name is not there, so I cannot make out. It is only showing the name of the mobile. Okay, just a brief recap to what we are discussing. As we all know, the Bhagavad Gita is one such book that gives solution to all our problems in human form of life. Not only to one, but to everyone. Whoever he may be, in whatever course of life, wherever, for any and every situation where there is a change in equation or there is some imbalance in life, Bhagavad Gita gives a very precise, to the point reply. It is such a mystical book. And this book has inspired and transformed millions across the world. Not only in the religious communities, not only the thinkers or the salvationists, even those who are from the common walk of life, even the scientific communities. Many renowned scientists. I'll share the views of one of the scientists, a German scientist. He won the Nobel Prize in 1932 for creation of quantum mechanics. Very interesting. Werner Karl Heinsberg. So he was the key person for planning the first German nuclear reactor. And he was the principal scientist behind the German nuclear program, weapon program. So in his view, in his understanding, he said that quantum theory will not look ridiculous to people who have studied Vedanta. And Bhagavad Gita is the conclusion of the Vedanta. His another observation, quantum theory is very difficult. Quantum physics is very intricate subject matter. So another of his very formidable realization which he reveals, he says is that not only is this universe strange, Jagat is Vichitra, is strange. He says it is not only strange than we think, it is stranger than what we can think. So Bhagavad Gita is giving answers to all the misconceptions, or rather strange and unknown reasons to why there are so many dualities in this material existence, which is perplexing to each and every one. It is the most beautiful philosophical song. Simultaneously, it is not just giving solutions. It is a very beautiful philosophical song. And it gives the deepest insight of the happenings of the world. So we will begin the second chapter. We are continuing. We are on the last section of the second chapter. The second chapter is the second most detailed chapter in Bhagavad Gita. It has 72 verses. And this second chapter is divided by our teachers, our acharyas, in 4 sections. Very simple to remember. The first section, which begins from verse number 1 till practically verse number 11. It talks about Arjuna's bewilderment and Arjuna taking shelter of Krishna. So bewilderment in our life, indecision in our life, the dilemma in our life only exists when we do not have a guide. When we do not have a spiritual person to show us the light. When we think that the way is dark and dense. So Arjuna takes shelter of Krishna, and then Krishna begins to speak Bhagavad Gita. And the first knowledge Krishna gives is about the Atman, about the self, who we are, to dispel the wrong identification or misidentification of Arjuna. And very systematically, Krishna gives the discourse on the living entity being spiritual, beyond matter. That is the soul proper. That is from verse number 2 till verse number 30. So it gives the identity. The first one is Guru or guidance. And the second section gives about the identity, the real eternal identity. And the third section, which is from verse number 31st till practically Arjuna's question, that is 53rd. Till 53rd, Krishna speaks about Buddhi Yoga, about the principle of acting in Buddhi Yoga, in Krishna consciousness. And the famous verse is Karmanyavadhikaraste. We discussed in length what it means to Ma Phaleshu Kadachana, and how to learn the art of acting without being attached to fruitive results or the outcome. So when Arjuna heard this section, so Arjuna became very keen and very desirous. Arjuna is such a student that he immediately applies what he hears. That is one reason while Dronacharya was training him, teaching him. So Dronacharya told Yudhishthira and Kunti Devi that never ever feed Arjuna in the night time. Because previously when there was night, there was no electricity. There was the light of the fire or flame. Once it happened that Arjuna was being fed in the night. And what happened? Because they were in exile, so the wind blew and the flame of the fire was terminated. So it was pitch dark and Arjuna was eating. So what did he do? He continued to eat. And what he was, he came to have a very deep, profound experience and realization. That he could see that even if there is no light, his hand can reach his plate and pick up the morsel, and that morsel goes in the mouth. It does not go in the nostril, or it does not go in the eyes, or it does not go into the ears. So he did this a couple of times, and he could see that even in dark, when I can make my hand reach my mouth, then he got this inspiration that I can practice what I have been taught, not only during the sunlight of the daytime, I can even practice at night. So whatever was taught to Arjuna by Dronacharya, any martial skill, the same day Arjuna excelled it, if not in the day, in the night. That is why Arjuna's one name is Gudakesha, one who has conquered over sleep. How he could conquer over sleep? Because he had the urge. He had that very inquisitiveness, that deep desire to learn, to improve, to know. So that Arjuna is very attentive while he is hearing the Buddhi Yoga principle. You act in divine consciousness. to act in Krishna consciousness. So as he heard the discourse, Krishna spoke that one who is performing his action in this divine consciousness, he can transcend, he can very easily go beyond the cycle of Janma Bandha Vinirmukta. He can go beyond, he can surpass the cycle of birth and death. And how he can surpass? By being fixed in intelligence. Sa madhva achala buddhis tata yogam avapyasi. This is the 53rd verse. So when Arjuna heard this, so Arjuna became very inquisitive, because Arjuna had this tendency, or he had this inclination to apply and to acquire what has been taught. That is one of the reasons why Krishna chose and selected only Arjuna and no one else to speak Bhagavad Gita. Because Krishna was very sure that Arjuna is going to apply what Krishna is going to speak. Others, they may deliberate or they may speculate, but hardly one can apply. So Arjuna, in the 54th verse, this is the final section. Final section is from 54th verse till 72 verses. This is the last section. So Arjuna inquires about such a person who performs Buddhi Yoga, whose consciousness is in divine platform, who is unaffected by results, and one who is always liberated, one who is ever satisfied. So Arjuna puts 4 questions. The questions are that how to recognize such a person who is in this state of action. Second is, how does he speak? And we deliberated in the last 2 sessions, speech means that his language means that how he responds to different situations in life. When there is trouble, when there is difficulty, he is unaffected. How he is unaffected? Because his intelligence and mind both are fixed in transcendence. So how he is able to fix his mind and intelligence in transcendence? How he is not disturbed? Even amidst the good or evil, Dukkheshu anudvigna manaha. This is the 57th verse that we discussed last session. And Sukheshu vigatspriha. Vitaraga bhaya krodha astita dhir muniruchyate. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries. So miseries which is coming from the mind, from the body, from someone else, or even from demigods or from nature, from wherever, from whomever, from wherever and from whoever. He has been inflicted sufferings or miseries, but he is unaffected. And in this material world, he is neither praising nor despising. And he gives up everything, whether it is favorable or unfavorable. So how to come to that platform? How to be able to do that? How to remain completely unaffected, remain neutral when there is provoking situation, when there is critical situation. So Krishna will answer this, and this is the 3rd question of Arjuna that Krishna answers in the 58th verse, that how does he sit? 58 till 63. We will try to cover today, at least this section. This is the subsection of the final section, 58 to 63. That a person who is in divine consciousness, who is Krishna conscious. So how does he sit? Sit meaning not that whether he sits in Padmasana, or like I am sitting on chair, whether he sits on chair, or he sits on a raised platform, or he sits on floor, Now, how does he sit means that how he is able to restrain the forces of his mind and senses. How he is able to control them. How he is able to regulate them. How he is able to curb them. Very deep question. All of us, and the new year is coming, that we will have a resolution. What is the resolution? That I will give up my bad habits. I will give up those things which are unfavorable for my success or my progress. But seldom we are able to do that. Why? Because we do not apply the technique which is given by Krishna. So it is very, very appropriate that we have the very appropriate verse to discuss today, just on the threshold of the new year approaching from tomorrow. Some of you raised hand. So how to come to this platform to be able to control what control is, how to be able to come out of our bad habits. So Krishna gives the answer. Very interesting and very effective. So how we have to act? So Krishna gives this in the 58th verse. Yada samharte chayam kurmo angani vasarvasha indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya pragya pratisthita. So Krishna says, how does he control his senses? He gives an analogy and example of a tortoise. You see, a tortoise seems to be a very, humble, innocent creature who's always busy with himself. He has many merits. We will know what is the merit, why Krishna is bringing tortoise in play, in picture. So he says that yada samharte chayam kurmo angani vasarvasha. Kurma means the tortoise. Krishna comes in the incarnation of tortoise also. Why he comes in the incarnation of tortoise? Because tortoise has a shell. And that shell is so strong. It has such power, such strength, that even it could lift on its shell the weight of a mountain. Not an ordinary mountain. Of a mountain, Mandarachal, which was being used to churn the ocean. Just imagine, to churn the ocean. With a churning rod, the churning rod to be able to be used, and that weight of the mountain to float on the ocean, the tortoise is required. So Krishna is giving this example, saying that like the tortoise, he has one very distinct quality. What is the quality of the tortoise? That it can withdraw its limb, or it can retract. It can retract its limb and bring it under the shell. Have you ever seen a tortoise? Some of you? I have seen a very big tortoise on the beach of Jagannath Puri. A huge one. Very big. From the sea it came out. We were there. Luckily I was there at that time. And I saw a huge tortoise. The tortoise, it has this quality of retracting its limbs, its face, and its legs within the shell. How and whenever it feels or sees any danger. So where is the danger coming from? Indriyani indriyarthebhyas. When the senses come in contact with the sense objects. So tasya pragya pratisthita, the one who is in divine consciousness. Pragya means one who is in divine consciousness, or one who is in knowledge. So such a person who is sthita pragya, who is sthitadhi, who is fixed in mind and consciousness. So what he does? One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects. you know all what is sense objects? Sense objects, like for the eyes is the knowledge acquiring sense. How do we see? Through the eyes. And what the eyes are interested to see? Beautiful form, a pleasing form. And as soon as the object which has rupam, which is charming to the eyes gets absorbed. As the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So it is compared to one who is in divine consciousness, means that he is able to control his senses. He is not one who is controlled by his senses. If you analyze what we see, that in our case, we are very much controlled by the urges of our senses. Whatever our senses and mind desires or demands, we have to helplessly follow. But here it is being said that one who has this expertise or skill to be able to withdraw his senses from the object of the senses, just like a tortoise, he withdraws his limb when he sees danger. I am reminded, and when the tortoise's shell is so strong that even if an elephant stands on it, nothing will go wrong. The shell will protect the limbs of the tortoise. You bring a hammer, a huge hammer, and with all the force you strike on the shell, nothing will happen. So to that extent, Krishna is saying that one must come to that extent to be able to regulate and control his senses. So a very important aspect of spiritual practice, most important, most basic aspect, is to be able to control one's senses, not to be controlled by the senses. I'll give you one practical example, very relatable example. Like we all use mobile phone. Anyone, any, distinguished soul who is without mobile or cell phone, mobile phone, anyone? If genuinely any such soul is there with us, so please raise your hand. Who does not have his own personal phone? Anyone? No one. So why do we purchase a mobile phone? What is the purpose? Keep interacting. Some of you can respond. Not it is that I have to only speak. Yes, Nikki. Hare Krishna. When you take a mobile connection, what is the purpose? What is the idea behind taking a mobile?
प्रभु जी मतलब जो पर्पस है उस पर्पस को फुलफिल करने के लिए, लाइक कॉल करने के लिए या मैसेज करने के लिए किसी को.
Okay. So whenever you want, you can use it, isn't it? So we take a SIM or we take a handset, assuming that whenever we need or whenever there is requirement, we can use this mobile as our assistant. As he said, to communicate or to text or to receive some information or message from someone else. But what happens? As soon as we keep the mobile, and especially if the mobile has internet connection, Android connection, Android phone. Do we use the mobile or the mobile uses us? How many genuinely can say that they use the mobile does not use them? This is one good example of what it means to control and what it means to be controlled. So the senses are there to be used in service of the Supreme, so that we can have spiritual progress. self-realization, and success. That will give us the ultimate happiness. But instead, what is happening? That the senses are making us their slaves. We have to become master of senses and servant of the Supreme. But what we do? We want to become master of the Supreme and we remain servant of our senses. So Krishna is giving this analogy and he's explaining that the sense control of a spiritual seeker or a practitioner should be like he's giving the inspiration based on a tortoise. So whenever there is need, he can manifest his limbs, he can do the needful, and whenever there is a danger, he can retract and withdraw. So he is always safe. He is never ever in danger. So Prabhupada says in the purport, let us discuss the purport. A test of a yogi or a devotee or a self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. So some level of control must be there. For anyone who is a spiritual seeker, for animal there is no control. You seen an animal? You see an innocent cow on the street. And as soon as the cow sees a vegetable seller, she sees green on his basket, on his hand rickshaw. What the cow does, she immediately approaches and wants to have a bite. But before she can bite the vegetable seller has a stick and he beats the cow with the stick. So every time the cow does that, she is not able to get the vegetable, but she gets the stick. But as soon as she sees the vegetable, she does not remember the stick. She is only able to remember the taste of it. So for animal, there is no question of sense control. But if human life is without sense control, that is on the platform of animal. So Prabhupada is saying here the test of either he is a yogi who is practicing how to control his mind and senses, or a devotee who is engaging his mind and senses in Krishna's service, or a self-realized soul, is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictations of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. Situated means how he sits. Like the tortoise, he sits in one place whenever he sees the danger. How? Just by retracting his limbs. And the enemy can do no harm. He cannot be harmed. Once he has retracted, you try whatever. You make an attempt of whatever resource is available. Nothing will work. So the senses, Prabhupada says, are compared to the venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. So that is the characteristic of the senses. So the senses are within. And how it acts like a serpent. Like a snake charmer. So a person who is in this divine consciousness, who is in Buddhi Yoga, whose mind and intelligence is fixed in transcendence, he never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do nots and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. This is step one. Step one is to be able to regulate the senses. To control the senses, so many times we have discussed, means to regulate the senses, not allow the senses to act loosely or independently. That means we do not engage our energy in trying to fulfill the senses and the mind's desires and the demands. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up the senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purpose. Similarly, the senses of a Krishna conscious person are used only for some particular purpose in this service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. So we have 5 knowledge acquiring senses and we also have 5 working senses. And these senses are always active, hyperactive. Never ever the senses or the action can be stopped. So what is like acting in tortoise? The way the tortoise's analogy is given, that we engage the senses in the service of the Supreme. As simple as that. Otherwise, we're not active. The senses are kept under strict regulation and control. Arjuna is being taught here how to use his senses in the service of the Lord instead of his own satisfaction. What was the sense satisfaction? Arjuna was thinking that he does not want to fight. He does not want to kill. What was the purpose? His senses will be more happy. Because with whom he had attachment, they would exist. And if they exist, then he can be happy or he can enjoy. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise, who keeps the senses within. So the message from this verse is that we are not to be used by our senses for fulfilling their desires and demands. Rather, we should engage the senses to be able to achieve the success of human life, is to come to the realization that we are immortal. How? By engaging in devotional service. Okay, so in theory it is seeming very simple, but in practice, how to be able to do that? To be able to restrict and restrain the senses is easy. As soon as we see Rasgulla, what the tongue says, I want to taste it. I want to have it. Last time when I tasted, I was able to enjoy it. And there is an urge, an irresistible urge from within. And immediately the mind starts to work. The intelligence also supports. And if he has money, he will immediately go to the shop and buy and try to enjoy. If he does not have money, then he will find some other ways how to enjoy. So immediately he is acting as the servant of his senses. So you see, if we examine our life, what are we trying to do? Are we engaging the senses according to our own plan, or do we have a plan? Hardly have a plan. We should have a plan. And we should engage the senses to fulfill that plan. But how to come? What is the plan? How one can begin the plan making? The 59th verse. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina raso varjam rasopiyasya param drishtva nivartate. So he said, Krishna is very practical. He says that Vishaya, the objects of the sense enjoyment, that the desire to enjoy the sense objects, can only be given, can only be restrained or restricted. How? When one achieves something higher. For example, a child. We have seen a child. If the child gets a toy, he's very much attached to play with the toy. And can you take away the toy from the child? As soon as you try to take away the toy from the child will become very disturbed. And he will create such a scene that you will regret, why did you attempt? Better you take and do whatever you like. Remain quiet. So here Krishna is giving the principle. First Krishna gave the analogy, but here is giving the principle how to be able to do that. He says, Raso Varjam Raso Api Asyaha. That one gets a higher taste, a spiritual taste, or higher level of satisfaction and happiness. Then he can easily give away, which is on the lower level, on the lower platform. Like students, those who are studying, mainly the boys, till the time they come to college, they have to have a bicycle. They have to pedal and go from one department to another, from residence to study place. But when they come to college, they have bike, from bicycle to bike. And when the bike is taken away, the bicycle is taken away, do they have any grudges or regrets? No. Because they have got a better means. They're very happy. So there are two aspects in this principle to be understood. The first is only negation will not work. Just by negation, artificially trying to restrain or trying to curb or trying to shut the senses from the sense object, it will never work. It will just not work. Why? Because the innate desire from within to enjoy the sense object will be there. And it will force the practitioners to be engaged in the same sense gratification what he was doing before. So Krishna is saying, though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense object remains. One example is given is someone who is diseased. Someone is diseased. So when he is diseased, so for him to recover, there are some restrictions given by the physician. He prescribes that few things should not be eaten. So till the time he is diseased, what he can do? He can negate, he can restrict. But as soon as he comes to the normal situation, what he does? He wants to enjoy. He will again indulge in the same things. So how to give up? So Krishna says that though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense object remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste. Raso api asya. When one gets a higher taste, param drishtva nivartate. He is then fixed in consciousness. So Krishna consciousness gives us the opportunity to experience the higher taste. What is the higher taste? The taste at the level of soul. Those who are sincerely practice, they experience that joy, which is so satisfying and so fulfilling that they are least interested in those activities which are normally done by others in the form of sense enjoyment. So they can very easily regulate and control their senses. Example is given of tongue. So before coming to practice of Krishna consciousness, most of those who are now sincere or serious practitioners in Krishna consciousness, they have not come from Himalayas, or they have not come from the heavenly planets, and they have been very, very divine in all aspects of life. No, they came from normal walks of life. How many of you were having non-veg before you came to Krishna consciousness? Any one of you? Only Dolamani? Some are, showing up. Others are still feeling shy. Yeah. So before they came to Krishna consciousness, okay, I can see 4, 5, 6. Okay. Many, most actually, most. Not only non-veg, they were taking drinks also. Not only drinks, they were taking drugs, heavy duty drugs. And one of the filmmakers, they thought that this program is for drug makers. So he made a movie. Dam maro dam, meet jayega. But now if you see these practitioners, because they have tasted Krishna Prasad, you give them 10,000 rupees and take them to the best 5-star hotel in town and tell them that if you eat meat, I'll give you 10,000 rupees. I can assure you, none of them will take your offer. Previously, they may be spending 10,000 rupees to go and dine there. See how it works. So because they have tasted something which is higher, which is much more satisfying and fulfilling, you try whatever. This is like tortoise. Why? Because they have tasted. They have tasted the satisfaction of Krishna Prasad. They will not be allured by anyone. So Prabhupada says, unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. Very important. Unless one has got a higher taste, he will never be able to give up his effort for sense enjoyment. Because taste is required. The soul is made in such a way that it is always seeking pleasure. It will never cease to seek pleasure because that is the constitution, that is the intrinsic quality of the soul. The soul cannot be without desire. The soul cannot be without activity. So when one engages in activities of Krishna consciousness, he comes to the level of soul. And that joy or that happiness of fulfillment that he experiences, then he does not want to come down to the level of matter, which is senses and mind. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The example which I gave. The patient, however, neither likes such restriction nor loses his taste for eatables. So that urge or that desire from within remains the same. And as soon as he is cured, he wants to dwell or enjoy upon those objects which have been restricted. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dhyan, Dharana, etc. is recommended for less intelligent people who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Krishna, the name itself means that which attracts everyone. The one who has come to Krishna consciousness, one who has tasted to some extent, even to a very minimal extent, the transcendental effect of Krishna consciousness, has no longer taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are therefore less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. I'll give you one very relatable, practical. There are so many, most of the devotees, every devotee. See, before coming to Krishna consciousness, I had only one liking, and that was to have tea. Wake up began with tea, and in the entire day, I don't know how many teas I was consuming. And somebody offered tea, that was the best thing to be offered. There was no restriction, never to say no to tea. But believe me, after coming to Krishna consciousness, that even desire to have tea, it vanished. Just vanished. What to say of me, of tea? I'll give you a story which was narrated by one of the devotees in his personal experience. These persons came in touch with him. This is from Mumbai. In Maharashtra, there is one Konkan area. You have heard about Konkan area, the coastal area. Those who live in the coastal area, those people, they consume the fruit which is coming from the sea. You know, Jalera fall. You don't know? The fruit coming from the sea. The sea also gives one fruit. What is that? Fish. Fish. So there was one couple. They were living in a very affluent place in Mumbai. And when they came back from the office, both husband and wife were working. They were very affluent. And they used to, every day in the evening, search to find out new varieties of fish to be able to get their taste buds satisfied. And they had to drive to many areas, to many places in finding some exotic, some whatever, different type of fish. So once they were searching, so they came to a place in Mira Road. They were staying in Bandra. From Bandra, they came to Mira Road, very far. And they found that in that area, there were 2-3 very good shops, which had, good varieties of their liking of this kind of seafood. So what they thought, that every day we have to drive so long, it takes away so much of time and energy. Everywhere traffic is a big pain. So they thought, why not shift our house? Because there was so much in pursuit of satisfying their taste buds, they decided to sell off their flat in Bandra and relocate to Mira Road, so that they can have access to enjoy these varieties of fish. And particularly, they were very much convinced by one shopkeeper. He said that for you, every day I'll give you some new varieties. So they sold their flat in Bandra and they relocated to Mira Road. Mira Road is not compared to what Bandra is. I don't know. I don't live in Mumbai, but any one of you, if you know. So they came to Mira Road and they used to in the evening go for their shopping, their favorite item. So while they were going, so they had to pass through one ISKCON temple. It was on their way from their home, from their apartment till the shop or the market where they were going. Every day they were hearing sounds coming out from the temple. And that sound, when it entered their ear, it would attract them. So they just looked to each other, but still they continued to walk. So one day, one of them, instead of walking straight, he walked towards the temple and came inside the temple. And the other also followed him. So they both came inside the temple. It was evening time. and Aarti was going. And that sound of Kirtan, when it entered into their ears, it gave them such pleasure, such delight, that they forgot everything. Why they had started, what they were going for. So that day, they sat in the Kirtan, they enjoyed, and that was Kartik month. So everybody was offering lamb. So they also picked up the lamb, just followed what others were doing. And they were pushed. They offered the lamb to the deities, took Charnamrit, took Prasad. And when the temple closed, they returned. So then what happened? It became a phenomenon. Every day they would start in the evening when they would come back from their offices to go towards the fish shop. But in between they would enter the temple, hear Kirtan, participate in Aarti, take some Charnamrit and some Prasad and go back. So the shopkeeper, when he saw that his customers are not coming for a week, so he became very disturbed. So he tried to search for them, find out, because he was bringing for them exclusively some very exotic varieties of this seafood. There was no other customer to pay so much. So what he saw, that this couple, they started from their apartment and they were coming in the direction of his shop. He felt very satisfied. Oh, today they will come. So whatever I have collected for them, I will offload today and make my money. But what he saw, that just before reaching his shop, they entered into his temple. And they never came to his shop. So he became very disappointed. So next day, he came to our temple in Mira Road. And he met the president. And he said, what have you done to my clients? They are my most valued clients. And it is only because of you and your prasad that they have stopped coming to my shop, and you have spoiled my business. So they gave up. They became devotee. So many. I was hearing from one devotee in Spain, an Indian who went to Spain. Why? To make money. But when he went to Spain, he was from Bihar, innocent fellow. And he saw that success of some of his natives from Bihar. They became very successful in Europe. They amassed a lot of money. So he also followed them. Went to Spain, somehow arranged visa, arranged money, got a flight ticket, reached there. A poor fellow was not able to do anything much. One of the biggest barrier was language. He could not speak Spanish, and anyone there did not speak Hindi, not even English. So he was stuck. So one day, when devotee were distributing books, so this fellow, he saw that this is Indian book, Bhagavad Gita. So he came on the counter and said, कोई ऐसी book दीजिए, हाँ, जिससे मेरा धंधा सफल हो जाए. So the devotee were very expert. They gave him a Spanish Krishna book and said, you read this. Whatever is your desire will be fulfilled. So when that fellow, he took that book, a devotee now, he became the president of a Spanish temple later. So much transformed. How? Because he started to read Krishna book. And why he was reading Krishna book? Because the devotee said that your desire will be fulfilled. His desire was to learn Spanish quickly, so that he can communicate and he can make business. So that purpose was lost. When he started to read Krishna book, he read the pastimes of Krishna. He was so attracted that he even forgot that he had come to make money here. He became a Krishna devotee. So every devotee has a story. But how he has converted or transformed? Because he got this higher taste. param drishtva nivartate. Unless and until one comes to the platform of experiencing this higher taste, he will not be able to give up the lower taste. Then sense control will be automatic, natural. And unnaturally, you try whatever, it will never work. It will just not work. Because the senses and the minds, they are always seeking pleasure. And if one has not experienced higher taste or higher pleasure, it will naturally be, there will be a huge amount of pushing to engage in sense gratification. And one cannot be a yogi or devotee or a seeker on the path of self-realization unless and until he is able to control the senses. Krishna's name is Rishikesha. Arjuna is Gudakesha and Krishna is Rishikesha. Rishika means the senses and Isha means one who controls or owns. So Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is the one who controls the senses of each and every one. But he controls only for those who are his devotees, those who are designing, those who are allowing Krishna to control their mind and senses. Like in Arjuna's case, how Krishna was controlling? Krishna was the chariot driver. Krishna decided where he would take the chariot. Not Arjuna decided. Arjuna told Krishna that Senyor Bihor Madhe Ratham Sthapya Meyachut, that you please position my chariot in the midst of both the armies so that I can see, I can assess the strength of both of the parties. Yavan etan niraksheham yodhu kaman avasthitam. But what Krishna did? Did he take the chariot right in the center where both the armies were arrayed? No. Bhishma Drona Pramukhata. He took the chariot right in front of where grandfather Bhishma and Guru Drona were. So if we allow Krishna or his representative to control, then only the senses can be controlled. How? By engaging in service and experiencing a higher taste. This principle is very, very important for all of us. If we do not apply this principle, there is no question of any progress or any development. One will remain a slave of his senses. What level of consciousness is this? Subhuman. Why? Because the senses are very forceful. How forceful? 68 verses. Yatato hi api kaunteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. Yatato hi api kaunteya. One may be endeavoring, attempting, like the yogis who goes into the Himalayas. They try to shut. They try to close the senses. But what happens? As soon as the sense object comes in contact with the senses, all their shutting and all their withdrawing goes for a toss. Why? Because Indriyani Pramathini. Pramathini means it is always agitating, always disturbing like mad. And haranti means it forcefully takes away. What it takes away? Manaha. The mind. The mind is drawn. Where? Towards the objects of the senses with the desire to enjoy it. The senses are so strong and impetuous. Impetuous means that which cannot be stopped or reversed. Oh Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination, not ordinary, Purushasya Vipasthita. Vipasthita means one who is skilled to be able to discriminate, one who is learned what is right and what is wrong. But even if you may be knowing, like we see the warning is there on every cigarette packet, that smoking is injurious to health. But what the smokers do? They are all aware, but still they smoke. They cannot give it up. Why? Because the senses are so strong. So there are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses. The senses cannot be conquered. Senses cannot be curbed. What senses can be done? Senses can be purified. It has to be purified. How? By engaging in devotional service, like in the last verse Krishna is speaking. Even the greatest of them, greatest of philosophers, learned sages, transcendentalists, we have so many. I don't want to name them. So many, endless list. They all sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment and due to agitated mind. And Prabhupada gives some of them. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment. Although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe type of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are so many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, engaging the mind in Krishna. Maya Sakta Mana Partha. This is from where bhakti begins. What we have to engage? The mind. How do we engage the mind? By first engaging the senses. It's very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna. To be Krishna conscious means to be engaging the mind in Krishna, thinking about Krishna. What does it mean about thinking about Krishna? Not to perform activity, inactive? No. To think of Krishna's interest. Everyone is thinking of his own selfish interest. But to the extent one is thinking of Krishna's interest, he is Krishna conscious. One cannot see such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, Yadavadi Manocheta Krishna Padara Vinde Navanavarasadhamni Udyantam Rantumasit Tadavati Bat Nari Sangame Smaryamane Bhavati Mukh Vikhar Shushtu Nishti Vanam Cha. Very beautiful poetry by Sri Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya is the spiritual master of the spiritual master of Sripad Ramanujacharya. Remember Srirangam? We went to Srirangam. We saw the deity of Sripad Ramanujacharya. Anyone remembers the name of his spiritual master? Yamunacharya's spiritual master? Sri Mahapurna. And Mahapurna's spiritual master is Sri Yamunacharya. So Yamunacharya has composed this. He says, since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, Navanavaras Dhamni Udyantu Rantu Masit. So one is experiencing every day higher and newer pleasure. Whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at that thought. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by sufficient quantity of nutritional eatables. Maharaj Ambrish also conquered a great yogi Durvasa Muni simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savai Mana Krishna Pada Ravandeo Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane. So what is to be done? So Krishna gives the conclusion in the next verse, 61st verse. He says, Tani sarvani sanyamya yuktya matpara vasehiyas indriyanam tasya pragya pratisthita. Tani sarvani sanyamya. So Krishna is giving the conclusion. He is saying that one who restrains his senses, Tani sarvani. Sarvani means in all situations. What he has to do? He has to have sanyam. Sanyam means restraint. Now here Prabhupada is saying keep under control, same here, restraint. How one can have restraint? How one can restrict? Yukt asita matpara. When one is asit, when one is situated where? Matpara, in relation with Krishna. The one who is not Krishna conscious, for him there is no question of any sense control or mind control. So all the programs, all the seminars, or all the workshops of mind control, completely bogus, useless. It will never work. Why? Because it is only Krishna who can control the mind. And for whom Krishna will control the mind? Who are yukta asita. Yukta asita means who are rightly situated. Rightly situated means those who are Krishna conscious. And matpara, who have cultivated relationship with Krishna. Then vashehi yas indriyana. He can very easily curb or control his senses from the sense object. Such a person is tasya pragya pratisthita. He is rightly situated. He is situated in spiritual intelligence, steady intelligence. Prabhupada gives a big purport. I'll complete this verse and the next verse also. We'll come to the final verse. Okay. So that is the highest conception of a yoga perfection in Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. Very clear. And to the extent one is Krishna conscious, to that extent sense control is possible. You are 10% Krishna conscious, 10% senses can be controlled. 50%, 50% can be controlled. 100% completely under control. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tatheva bhajamiyam. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked up a quarrel with Maharaj Ambrish. And Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. That is his anger. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful as a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sages' injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses. How he was able to control? Because in this quarrel, the king never reacted. He remained peaceful. He remained quiet. Whereas this great sage Durvasa, he became very agitated. And his agitation, he was aroused by anger. So the king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. So how the king was able to control, and even the great sage Durvasa was not able to control his senses, because the king was engaging his senses in service of the Supreme. Very beautiful verse. Savai mana Krishna padaravindeyor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanuvarnane karo haror mandir marjanadeshu shrutim chakara achyut satkathodaya mukunda lingalaye darshane darsho tadbhritya gatra sparshayang sangamam तत्पाद सरोज सौरभे श्रीमत्तुलस्या रसनम तद अर्पिते पादौ हरौ क्षेत्रे पादानुसर्पणे शिरो ऋषिकेश पादाभिवन्दने कामं च दास्या न तु काम काम्या यथोत्तमा श्लोके जनाश्रया रति. Very beautiful. Try to understand this verse. So King Amrish, although he was the ruler of the entire earth, but what was his consciousness? King Amrish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Save mana Krishna padaravindeyo. Always his mind was fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. What it means to be fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord? That he was following. He was following what Krishna wants. Engaged his worth in describing the abode of the Lord. He was always glorifying the Lord. Vachamsi is to speak. Vacha is to speak. What he is speaking? Vaikuntha gunanuvarnane. He is always glorifying the abode of the Lord. And Karo Haro Mandir Marjanadeshu. And how he engaged his hands, his working senses, in cleaning the temple. Marjan. Marjan means to clean. So he was with his own hand, even though he was the king, mighty king, he was engaged in cleaning the temple with his own hands. His ears in hearing the pastimes. Very important, hearing the pastimes. So in this way, he was engaging each and every limb of his body in the engagement of some service to the Lord. So all this qualification made him fit to become a Matpara devotee of the Lord. Yukta Asita Matpara. Matpara means one who is in love with the Lord. Who will serve the Lord? Only those who are in love. Otherwise, others will make Krishna serve them. The desire and the demand is that why you are there as God? To fulfill all our desires and demands. We will offer you 10 rupees and you offer her 10 crores. Krishna is so foolish, is so cheap. So how to come to that stage of being fixed is by engaging each and every sense in Krishna's service. Prabhupada says the word Matpara is most significant in this connection. How one can become Matpara is described in the life of Amrish Maharaj. Sri Baldev Vidya Bhushan, a great scholar and Acharya, in the line of Matpara remarks, Mat Bhakti Para Bhavena Sarvendriya Vijay Purvika Swa Atma Drishti Sulabheti Bhavaha. The senses can be completely controlled by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. So this is the secret. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given as a blazing fire burns everything within the room. Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of a yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than Vishnu simply are wasting their time in vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of real yoga. And one who does not do that, one does not engage his senses and mind in service of Krishna. So what he does with the mind and what the mind does with him. Next two verses. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu upajayate Sangat sanjayate kama, kama krodha bhijayate. The one who is not contemplating on the Supreme, what is the contemplating? While contemplating on the objects of the senses, persons develop attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. So this is the chronology, how it works. And one who is not meditating, one who is not focusing his attention, his mind on Krishna, his mind and his senses are contemplating the sense objects, how to enjoy. And as one contemplates on the sense object, he develops attachment for them. Sangat sanjayate kama. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. Because when lust is not satisfied, it transforms into anger or wrath. Quickly, I'll take the next verse also. And it does not leave the person here, that he becomes angry. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. And moha smriti vibhrama. Smriti bhashad buddhi nasho pranashyati. From anger, complete delusion arises. Sammoha. Sammoha means illusion or delusion. And from illusion, smriti vibhrama, loss of memory. Smriti bhavshad buddhi nasho. And one loses his memory when one loses his memory, then his intelligence is lost. Memory is bewildered. Buddhi nashad. Buddhi does what? Discriminate what is to be done and what is to be rejected. But buddhi is also not working. And when the buddhi is not working, intelligence is not working, he cannot decide what is right, what is wrong, what is religion, what is irreligion, what is to be done, what is not to be done. What he does? Buddhi nasha pranashyati. He falls down again into the material world. So very important in this section to what we have discussed is to experience higher taste. Because if we do not experience higher taste, we cannot give up sense gratification. Okay, I'll stop here. You can please read the purports of 62 and 63. I have spoken on the principle. If there is any question, any discussion, we can have. We have a couple of minutes. Yes, Domenico.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, we receive some higher taste from many things in the spiritual part, but we forget that. We doesn't retain that. So, how to retain that, and also how to develop that higher taste also. That.
Krishna is explaining here. Tani sarvani sanyamya yukt asit matpara. So we have to remain in that zone of remaining connected. Like you use a mobile phone. When the mobile phone, the battery is charged, and when the signals are good, how much you can speak, how much you can communicate. But if the battery is weak and the signals are low, what can you communicate? You will keep saying, and the other person will keep asking, what did you speak? What did you speak? What did you say? So what is making the battery charge? and signal strong. Is our own practice and our association. Krishna is saying, Yuktasi Matpara. Connection, that relation has to be strengthened. If the relation is strengthened, then we'll keep receiving the higher taste. You'll be able to taste in every facet of whatever service we are doing. Okay. Hare Krishna. Why we are not tasting that higher taste? Because we are not Matpara. When we are not Matpara, we are not even Vashehi Yasindriyana. Very clear principle Krishna is speaking. And if one does not do that, what will be the situation? Buddhi nashad pranashyati. Okay, I don't see any questions coming. I'll stop here. I have some service. Okay. Thank you for your attention. And you have got the clue how to control, how to overcome the habits by having a higher taste. And how to receive the higher taste? By engaging in Krishna's service. To the extent we are engaging our mind and senses, the mind and senses will become purified. And only purified mind and senses can be controlled. The impure mind and senses remain ever uncontrolled. Thank you very much. Shriman Bhagavad Gita Yatharup ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Any announcement from anyone? Yagnesh?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Boli, any announcement?
Yes, Prabhuji. Tomorrow we will come temple.
Welcome. Whoever wants to come is welcome. Tomorrow,
Yes,
good way.
yes, Prabhuji. I will inform the number.
We can really make this year better year by giving the chance to. अभी तक तो अपना बहुत रथ चढ़ा लिया, अपना मन का रथ अपने अनुसार बहुत चला लिया. We can really offer to Krishna if we so desire. Okay. Thank you
Yes,
very
Prabhuji.
much.